Will Russia invade the Ukraine? I have one primary reason on why this will not occur. The U.S. and NATO will give Russia either written or verbal reassurances that NATO will not move into including Ukraine in NATO, meaning no NATO troops will be on the ground there in the foreseeable future. This would be assurance enough for Putin to not do an invasion. If these assurances do not meet Putin's standard, I would expect that there's a very high likelihood that a Russian invasion of the Ukraine will occur. I have 10 reasons why this will occur if NATO does not agree to Putin's demands. The first is the German economy needs natural gas to stay warm and produce electricity over the winter, and they get their natural gas from Russia. They've already indicated that they do not want even weapons going to the Ukraine, and they're not going to be a participant. France and Germany together are saying they'd like to negotiate with Putin. Number two, no NATO country really wants to put troops into the Ukraine to trigger a ground battle. So although they're willing to send weapons and talk about economic sanctions, they are not willing to go forward with actually putting troops on the ground. The U.S. is in the same camp. The U.S. is not going to put troops into the Ukraine to help with the defense. We are talking about deploying an additional 8,000 troops to Eastern Europe, but those would actually be deployed into NATO countries, not actually into the Ukraine. The U.S. is weary of war. We've been in a war for 20 years. It just ended in Afghanistan and Iraq, and then we followed that up with a very hasty, poorly planned retreat out of Afghanistan. The U.S. announced that they were pivoting their defenses to the Pacific region, primarily to focus on China. And we have made that very clear that we view China as the primary threat, meaning that our forces are now not capable of focusing on containing Russia as we did during the Cold War. Putin knows all of those previous 6 facts, and he knows that the U.S. and NATO are not going to fight a ground battle, that the worst case scenario is he's going to have economic sanctions. The Germans have indicated they really do not want to kick Russia out of SWIFT, which is the payment system, the dollar payment system. The Russians have countered that if they are kicked out of SWIFT, that they will cut off natural gas to Europe, which would be a very big problem for the Europeans this winter. So that's number 7. Number 8 is Eastern Ukraine has been under the influence of Russia and part of Russia on and off for 400 years. Lots of those people in the Eastern Ukraine are of Russian heritage and Russian speaking, and we think that that is an additional item. And Putin has indicated that he views Russia and Ukraine as one people, and as Ukraine is an essential part of Russia. And then 10, Russians have a security mindset that is left over from World War II. We may not be fully cognizant of it here in the U.S., but the Soviet Union during World War II lost 24 million people. That was around 15% of their population. There was about 2/3 of those were civilians and 1/3 was military forces. A lot of the civilians that were lost were actually in the current Ukraine and Belarus area. So you see why Russia would like to have a buffer zone. Clearly, right now, Western Europe does not pose a threat, but the Germans did manage to pull together very quickly after World War I and launch a very significant attack on all of Europe, including Russia. And prior to that, you had the invasion by Napoleon of Russia that was only defeated because of winter. So the Russians are very concerned about the security and having a buffer area between them and Western Europe because of the long history and the massive losses in World War II. I don't think that Russia is going to invade the Ukraine. I do think that there was going to be some sort of negotiation, a diplomatic solution that addresses Russia's concerns, gives Putin a way to save face, possibly even some sort of assurance that NATO will not have troops in the Ukraine and that the Ukraine will not be part of NATO for the foreseeable future. This would be enough to avoid a war. This is what I hope for. This is what it looks like is probably going to happen given the diplomacy moves that Germany and France are trying to make. I think this would be the best outcome for everyone, and hopefully we can achieve that and we can avoid a war in the Ukraine. This is Ben Halliburton. Please take a look at buildingbenjamins.com for more information. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.